next speaker really enjoys reading. In fact, he enjoys reading so much that he often finds himself reading 17 different books at once. I wonder why 17 and not 19 or 16. 17 books at once. Combine that with some serious ADHD squirrel-like tendencies, and you can bet your bottom dollar that finishing one becomes quite the accomplishment. Again, this is a time factor. So when his next speech required him to learn something he didn't know, and then to teach it to the audience, he decided to scan the bookshelf, grab one of the 17, wipe the dust off, and inform you of the history of Nike and its founder, Phil Knight. Here to share with you the book he almost finished. Please help me welcome to the stage, Mr. Colin Walters.
Show of hands, who has read this book? Anybody? Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. Interesting, okay. Well, it's true, I almost did finish it. I have a couple pages to go. But I did grasp the general background of the story. Is anybody familiar with Phil Knight and how Nike was actually founded? A little bit, yes? Well, let me pose another question. Who has ever had this crazy idea, crazy with a capital C, idea with a capital I, that you tell the average person about and they look at you like you are indeed crazy? I'm sure, yeah, there we go, a little bit more hands. I'm sure we've all had those. And how have we followed through with them? Have we been proactive in going after them? Maybe a little bit here and there. Well, this is how Nike was founded. Phil Buck Knight, as his father called him, he ran track at Oregon. And he wasn't the fastest, not the slowest, but he created a fascination with shoes. And then he went on to Stanford, where he got his MBA. Very bright individual, very intelligent individual. And he took a class in entrepreneurship where he decided to devote his passion and his inspiration for shoes to a thesis and a project that he took a year to put together, in which he presented to his class in the Stanford entrepreneurship class, which bored them to death. It was based on something similar in regards to how the Japanese overtook the camera industry back in the 60s from the German industry. And he felt that we could have the same revelation with shoes. That you could produce high quality, low cost shoes and take that from the Japanese culture and instill it into the American public and change the shoe culture and the shoe industry for good. And this is what he pitched, and this was his crazy idea, was to go over to Japan to see if this was a feasible opportunity. Now, just to recap real quick, there's a lot of business stuff that goes into this book. There's lawsuits and countless business tragedies and triumphs and tribulations and all that. I want to tell you about this root of where it all stemmed from, because I find that fascinating, and I find it fascinating where these crazy ideas stem from. So going back to the Stanford class, he pitched this idea to his father, because his father is who he respected the most. And his father also had the money that he needed to get over to Japan. So he felt that, number one, yes, he needed to go over to Japan, and number two, he wanted to see the world before he did that, because he wanted to make a mark on the world. And in order to do that, he felt it imperative to see the world with his own eyes and experience it for himself. And so he got the $50 from his dad, and he booked the trip abroad. He actually landed in Hawaii, started selling encyclopedias right off the beach, fell in love with the atmosphere of surfing for a little bit, postponed his plans and his mission just a little bit, until he realized that he absolutely hated selling encyclopedias. He tried selling securities, did it for a little bit, started getting experience in the business world and selling and developing the mindset for how to go about his mission. Then he moved on to seeing the world a little bit more. He went all over the Himalayas. He went to the Dead Sea. He went to the number one place that he was so fascinated with was Greece. And specifically the Temple of Athena, which is the temple of Nike, which is what stood out to him, which stands for victory. And if there's anything that drew Buck Knight's passion more than winning, it was to not lose. Which is interesting because it all comes back full circle, which I'll get to in a minute. So he goes on his trip, he travels around, he sees the world, and he makes his way to Japan. And this is where he finds a manufacturing shoe company, and with the Onitsuka shoe, the classic, which I'm sure everybody has seen at one point in time, he walks into the building and he's able to set up an appointment with the executives and pitch the exact presentation he gave in his Stanford class. And he pitched it to these executives in this shoe manufacturing company. And they're far less aggressive than the American business culture. So they talk and they have their own little powwow huddle. And so they ask him, well, what's your company called? He didn't have one. And so he thinks back to where he's from, which is Portland, Oregon, and the vision of what he stares at every day, which is his old high school blue ribbons, comes to mind. He says, Blue Ribbon Sports. They offer him the deal, and the business was born. So in 1964, Blue Ribbon Sports was born, and this was the first company that Phil began with. And then they doubled in sales every single year. He first started selling shoes out of the back of his truck, out of the back of his car at local high school meets, going around everywhere doing what he knew best, connecting with coaches and athletes. And it doubled to $16,000 and then $32,000 year after year. It continued to double in sales. But everything that he made, he put it right back into the business to help it grow. And this is far before venture capitalism was a thing. So he's getting loans and he's getting credit lines from the banks, and he is skating on thin ice for the fact that everything he brings in, he gets right back out over to Japan to then hopefully have the shipment come in on time. And so it's this fine line of having to weasel his way in and out of the financial world to actually fund his business. Fast forward to 77, and it's a $70 million company in sales, and the problems still occur. Granted, there's lawsuits and everything that went into this, and it's a rather fascinating, good call. Long story short, Phil Knight and Nike went public in 1980 after never wanting to do so in order to not ruin their culture. And then after going public, became worth $168 million the day that he decided to do that, after giving himself a salary for the first time that consisted of $18,000. That red card came extremely quick. I'm going to hand it right over to our Toastmaster. Wow.